What's up, everyone? So I wanted to talk in this video about what I think are the best open field marches just in general. But like what I wanted to discuss is the best open field marches for like one march configuration, two, three, four, all the way up to six. And William Wallace released about 2 weeks ago. So I'm sure a lot of you guys are wondering, is he worth investing in? Does he make the cut? I also wanted to talk about that as well briefly. But this video will be mainly devoted to what I think are the best marches going forward for 1 through 6 marches. So without further ado, let's get into it. So what do you think the best one march is? So the best one march, in my opinion, would first be infantry, just because I think Luce has been very, very strong recently. Since his release, he's been very, very strong. And there are three options you can see, probably three of the more popular options right now, which are Wallace Luce, Scipio Luce, and Luce Alex. And no surprise, Luce is in all three of these marches. Among these three, in my opinion, the strongest and probably the best, in my opinion, would just be Scipio Luce. And if you're wondering why I put Scipio Luce as the top, it's just because I feel like Scipio brings so much to the field with his AoE debuff on his active. I think this march is just in general the best overall. People have been telling me that Wallace is... I've been hearing mixed reviews about Wallace. It's a little hard for me to give a review on Wallace without actually using him myself. So I would say Wallace Luce, it's good for native players. And when I say good for native players, I mean that if you're a young account, I would advise you to do Wallace Luce, just because going forward, infantry looks like it'll be going toward all Smite commanders. So Wallace, Luce, Gorgo, we've seen just all these Smite commanders come out for infantry, and it looks like eventually Scipio will be phased out of the meta at some point. So I would say if you're a native player, Wallace Luce looks like just the way to go. Because if you invest in Scipio, at some point Scipio is just going to lose relevance in the game, because infantry is just drifting more toward the Smite meta. So I would say Scipio Luce is the best for older accounts, maybe people that already have Scipio maxed. Alex, I think, is also a good option. I've been hearing a lot of people preach Luce Alex. Let me just say, I've used Luce Alex and I've used Scipio Luce. Scipio Luce trades better for me. I'm just going to put it out there. The only difference between these two marches is that I'd say Alex has a lot more stats. But in my opinion, Scipio Luce just trades best. Best for everything. Best for everything, in my opinion. I don't think Wallace is bad. I think when we get the next gen infantry commanders with Smite, I think Wallace will be a lot better with that. Doesn't look like his potential is that good right now. But I think, as I said, it is good for native players to invest in Wallace Luce, just because going forward, skill damage commanders will be phased out at some point for infantry. So that's where I'm sort of standing. I would say Scipio Luce is the best, then Wallace Luce, if you're a native or a younger player, you should head for that. So if I'm going to invest personally in Wallace, no, I will not. Just because I think it is, if anything, maybe even like the same level as Scipio, very slight upgrade. I don't think it's worth investing in Wallace at the moment. If you already have Max Scipio like me or Max Alex, just stick with the pair of Scipio Luce and Luce Alex. I think it's not worth upgrading to Wallace at the moment. He's okay. I've heard reports, I've heard things, but I think at the moment, if you have Scipio Luce or Luce Alex, just stick with that and save for future commanders. Now we're getting into 2 marches. So I'm including the Scipio Luce march as the best march, single march. So the second best march you can do, I would say it's either between Nevsky Joan or Huo Joan. So these are 2 options you'll probably hear a lot as well. I would say I lean more toward Huo Joan if we're talking about a single march. A single cav march, I would say Huo Joan is better. Nevsky Joan, I would say, provides a lot more defensive stats. If you look at Nevsky in game, actually, I still cannot believe how good Nevsky is in the game. If you look at Nevsky's stats, 20% defense, 20% health. His expertise also gives him a chance for 30% health. I think Nevsky is just very, very good. But if we're talking for pure damage, Huo Joan does more pure damage. So if you're looking for a tankier march, I would say Nevsky Joan is very solid, very good damage as well. But Huo Joan does do more damage in the sort of 2 march configuration. But let's say you're doing dailies. You'd buy dailies in game. The daily special offers in game do have Nevsky in them. So let's say you're a younger player, or maybe you're looking to invest in either Huo Joan or Nevsky Joan. I'd say if you're buying dailies, Nevsky is pretty good if you do dailies, because Nevsky is now in dailies, as well as Scipio, but I don't think you should do Scipio from dailies. Nevsky will still be relevant going forward, just because cavalry is still skill damage. Cavalry is not drifting toward a different type of damage. So Nevsky Joan, I think Nevsky will still have a meta place in the meta going forward in 2 cav marches. So Huo Joan, I would say currently is the best if you're just doing 2 marches. But if you do dailies, I would probably advise you to do Nevsky Joan, save the gold heads, and use it on a different march. So if we're talking about the best 2 marches, I would say currently Scipio Luce and Huo Joan. I'm going to explain my reasoning for why I do like this as well when I get to 4 marches. Okay, so hold tight until I get to 4 marches as well. I'll give my explanation on why I'm sort of doing it in this order as well. So for the best 3 march, it should come as no surprise that the next march I would recommend is Zook Herman. Very high skill damage march, a lot of AoE. Unfortunately, not much march speed, and I frankly love march speed. So this is why I sort of rank it as number 3. I'll also explain a little later why I ranked it in this order. So this is what I'd recommend as the 3rd best march, and of course, no surprise, as before, Scipio Luce is my opinion the 1st, Huo Joan is the 2nd, and then Zook Herman is the 3rd. So as you notice, I built 1 of each troop type. That's what you generally prioritize doing as maybe a newer player. You should build 1 of each troop type just because the meta commanders, there's at least 1 good meta pair for each troop type. So I would focus on first, at least infantry or cavalry. I'd say infantry or cavalry, both in a pretty good spot at the moment. Then head to an archer march at some point, maybe for your 2nd or 3rd march. But I'd say these are the 3 best marches at the moment, and they'll probably stay that way for at least, I'd say at least 6 or 7 months. Just because this generation of commanders, which is currently coming out with Belisarius Prime, William Wallace, and probably the next gen archers, will not be as strong as these commanders. So these 3 marches will probably stick around for at least, I'd say 6 months, in my opinion. Obviously, things are going to change, obviously, as the game goes on. Just obviously focus on what you think is the best for you at the moment. So for those wondering what's the best 4 marches you can do in the game, I'm currently using 4 marches myself, and for most players, I would just recommend to do 2 cav, 1 infantry, and 1 archer. As you can see in the previous one, I was just using 1 of each in the best 3 marches. 1 cav, 1 infantry, 1 archers. And going to 4 marches, I think 2 cav is very strong. Just because you get William in that lineup. And honestly, William has felt great for me. Some people might advise you to do Huo Belisarius. That's mainly for a 5th march. And frankly, I don't think Belisarius is that good anyways. So in terms of 4 marches, I think this is the best 4 march configuration you're going to get. In order of like how good I think the marches are, Scipio Luce is 1st, Nevsky Joan 2nd, Zook Herman 3rd, and Huo William last. So I use these 4 marches myself. As I said, I have all of them maxed and expertise except, once again, Huo. I explained my reasoning for that a few times. I'm not going to explain it again. But yeah, I have all these commanders maxed and expertise, and I would say they do great. So I think this is the best configuration for 4 marches. I'm actually going to show you why I think this is the best 4 marches, as well as why I suggested this order for the best 1 to 4 marches. So I'm not very much a big number guy, but I'm a person that tracks my stats, how my marches do. I always look to improve on what I'm doing. So I've tracked each of my past probably 5 or 6 KVKs, but my last KVK about 6 months ago, this KVK was probably like my breakout KVK where I got my most amount of kills. As you can see, I made a couple notes. HA Heroic Anthem KVK 2429, 2268, 1875. So you can see my kills from marches. This is one I want to talk about mostly. As you can see in this KVK, Scipio Luce did the most amount percent of kills out of all my 4 marches. And then Nevsky Joan was in 2nd place and Zook Herman in 3rd. So you might be wondering why I did this sort of order for like the best 1, 2, 3, 4 marches. It's based off my own individual data. So this is just 1 KVK. You might be thinking, oh, maybe this is just a fluke. This is just how it did for 1 KVK. This is all expertise comms except William and Herman, and pretty similar gear for all the marches. And as you can see, Scipio Luce and Nevsky Joan were my top 2 marches by quite a long shot in this KVK. Going to my next KVK, this is my stratagems KVK I played in 2268, 1900, 1824, 1770. All expertise commanders now except William, not William Wallace, of course, Cavalry William. And as you can see, my Scipio Luce is still my best performing march. Nevsky Joan in 2nd and Zook Herman in 3rd, pretty close actually 3rd, and then Huo William in 4th. So, as you can see, in these past 2 KVKs, my Scipio Luce and my Nevsky Joan both performed at the top 2 of my marches, which is very surprising. So, let's go to my last KVK. My last KVK, this is my huge KVK with all the Imperium Kingdoms 1 month ago, pretty recent. All expertise commanders. Every command except Huo. Sorry, not Huo's not expertise. All max commanders with similar gear. So as you can see, my Nevsky Joan somehow did my most percent of kills, and my Scipio Luce did my second most, and then Zook Herman in third, and then Huo William in fourth. So as you can see, in the past 3 KVKs I've played, in all of them, Scipio Luce and Nevsky Joan have been in the top 2. That's where I sort of did my ranking accordingly, where I put Scipio Luce as my top March, and then Nevsky Joan, or Huo Joan in this case, as my second best March. I didn't use Huo Joan, obviously, because I'm playing 4 marches. So Nevsky Joan is what you'd use if you're doing 4 marches, like I said. But as you can see, numbers don't lie, in my opinion. These are like my sort of summary of my 3 KVKs, as you can see. This makes it a little more easier to see. All KVKs I played. The last 3 KVKs, Scipio Luce, Nevsky Joan, my top 2 marches. Some people say Zook Herman is the best. I cannot agree with them. I'm sorry. If you look at my data for my last few KVKs, Zook Herman has not performed as well as Nev Joan, or Scipio Luce. And if you're curious about my gear, I have the best gear. Best gear. Well, besides the flag. But I have tier 5 boots on my Zook Herman March. My armaments are pretty good as well for my Zook Herman. This is my best armament set. When I saying pretty good. 3.5% inscriptions. 3.5% inscriptions on my Zook Herman March. And still, this March does not trade as well as my Scipio Luce or my Nevsky Joan March. This is my Scipio March. The armaments are not even good for my Scipio Luce March. It's just all attack for some reason. But yeah, you can see my armaments are pretty good for my Archer March, and they're still not performing as well. Like my gear and my armaments for my Archer March are pretty good, and it's still not performing as well as my other marches. So this is the reason I did my sort of order in this way, the 1, 2, 3, 4 marches. So that's how I'd rank the commanders based on how I'm doing in my current KVKs. So I'm sorry if I crushed any of your guys' hopes or dreams that Zook Herman is the best March. Even I've been told by many people that Zook Herman is the best March. It just doesn't add up for me. Like, I've been playing 3 KVKs, and Zook Herman has been my 3rd best March in all 3 KVKs. So I'm not sure what to say, but this is where I'm going with my best 4 marches. In order would be these 4 marches. And I'm currently at 4 marches myself. I feel like it's a pretty good balance. Eventually, I'll branch out to 5 marches. And if we're looking at the best 5th March configuration, obviously these 4 marches are there. And then for 5th, I would say it has to be either Asher Nebu or Asher YSG. YSG recently received his 3rd tier relic, which makes it pretty good actually. His 3rd tier relic is like 30% defense, I believe, which is pretty good. The only problem with that is that YSG lacks a lot of march speed. So not having that march speed is obviously... Oh, it's actually 12% skill damage, not 30% defense. But pretty good relic, actually. So the main issue I'd have with the Asher YSG March is... Obviously, YSG has no march speed, and Nebu has march speed. So this could be a matter of preference for you, I'd say. If you want the march speed, and frankly, a lot of players like march speed like me, I would say go for the Asher Nebu. But if you just want more damage, obviously YSG has like 50% skill damage, and Circle AoE, just go for Asher YSG. So I'd say this is the best 5 March configuration. For most players, maybe like on the fence, like me, you might be better off waiting until the next gen Archer commanders and then deciding if you're like me on a 4th March and waiting for a 5th March. I'd just wait and then invest in the next gen Archers, which should be pretty soon after this video, like 2 months, I'd say. So for the best 6th March, this is sort of out of my scope. I'll never probably get to 6 marches as free to play. I mean, I can get to 6 marches, but it's not worth doing 6 marches for me personally. So just based off what I've been talking to people, I'd say these are the best 6 marches which you can run. 2 infantry, Guan Scipio, Luce Alex. 2 archers, Asher Nebu, Zook Herman. And 2 cavalry, Huo William and Nevsky Joan. So I've heard people say to use Scipio Wallace instead of Guan Yu Scipio. Frankly, I don't think that's good. I don't see the synergy there. And you might be wondering, oh, people use Scipio Luce. Luce carries the march. It's not even Scipio doing that much. So I don't think Wallace is that versatile that it can work with Scipio, but I've heard people say it's okay, or even good, but I'm not really buying it. So when it comes to the best 6 marches, this is what I generally advise if you are aiming for 6 marches. Obviously, the meta changes and commanders phase in and out of the meta. So yeah, but this is where I'm looking at for 6 marches. 7th March, I've seen a lot of people using Siege for 7th March, and I think that's not a bad idea. Will I ever do a Siege March? No. Open field commanders in general are get you a lot more kill points than Siege. Sure, you can build a Siege March as a 7th March. Do I think it's that good or that viable? No. I think open field commanders are just much better. Siege March is like your 7th March priority, in my opinion. You should just focus on building open field marches for basically all your marches and just focus on the best stuff you can get. And then if you get a 7th March somehow, go for Siege, in my opinion. You can just AFK with the Siege March and just let it hit. So, yeah, that's where I'm looking at in terms of like the best 1 through 7 March configuration. I just wanted to give my like thoughts on what I thought about Wallace and if he fits into my like sort of lineup. And unfortunately, Wallace does not. So yeah, that's where I'm looking at for what, in my opinion, are the best open field marches. Obviously, guidance like this will change as the meta changes. So just try to look for up-to-date guides. This will probably be maybe outdated in a year, right? But at the moment, I think this is a pretty solid way you should build your marches up, even as a new player or maybe a player looking for a 4th or 5th march. Yeah, that's all I have.